Before you judge what I'm about to reveal, understand this. My family didn't just abandon me, they engineered my disappearance. They wiped my name from documents, erased my existence from every decision, and convinced the world that I was a danger to them. And the terrifying part? I believed them. I believed I was the problem. Until the night their perfect facade shattered, and every secret they buried dragged itself into the light. The first sign came in the form of a message, one sentence that froze my entire body. We need you. Please. It's life or death. These were the same people who threw my belongings into the street without a word of explanation. The same voices that screamed I was ungrateful, selfish, unworthy of the family name. But now their voices were shaking. When I opened the message, I saw the image that changed everything: a hospital bed, machines, my mother, who once looked at me as if I were a stranger, lying still, surrounded by people who betrayed me with a level of precision that still haunts my sleep. Next to her was a folder, one I recognized instantly, my inheritance file, the same one they claimed never existed. That was the moment I knew something catastrophic had happened, something they could no longer hide. And the truth? I had prepared for this moment long before they ever thought to call my name again. Because when they forced me out, when they turned their backs and rewrote history to make me the villain, I made a promise to myself. One day, they would need me more than I ever needed them. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew the foundation of our family. Every celebration, every smile, every tradition was held together by lies no one wanted to confront. Lies strong enough to exile a child, yet fragile enough to collapse at the slightest shift of truth. And when that collapse finally came, it wasn't quiet. It was violent. It was public. It tore their world apart in ways even I couldn't have predicted. This is the beginning of that story, the unraveling of a family that believed it would never pay for what it did. And the moment power returned to the one person they tried to discard. Listen carefully, because everything that follows, from the forgeries to the stolen money to the betrayal that nearly destroyed me, is documented, real, unforgettable. And it all started with the night they decided their only child was no longer worth keeping. To understand how everything fell apart, you need to see how it all began. Not during the chaos, but in the quiet spaces where the damage first took root. On the surface, my family looked ordinary, respectable, the kind of household where neighbors assumed everything was in order. A modest, middle-class home, 2 cars in the driveway, holiday dinners that seemed warm from the outside. People often said we were fortunate. They had no idea how much of that fortune depended on me. I was the one who woke up before dawn, who managed the bills no one wanted to acknowledge, who reminded everyone of appointments, deadlines, medications, the invisible backbone holding a fractured foundation together. My parents called it being responsible. I didn't realize at the time that they meant useful. My mother was the center of our home. At least that's what she told anyone who would listen. Behind her smiles was a woman who understood how to bend truth until it served her needs. Nothing happened without her permission, and she crafted loyalty by guilt, not affection. If she praised you, it was because she needed something. If she scolded you, it was because she already had. My father lived like a guest in his own house. A distant man who spent long evenings hunched over documents he never explained, shaped by disappointments no one dared to ask about. He avoided conflict the way some people avoid mirrors, afraid of what he might see if he stood still long enough. Then there was my older sibling, the heir apparent, the golden child, the one who believed attention was a birthright, and success was something inherited, not earned. To them, my existence was an inconvenience, proof that someone else in the family worked harder, sacrificed more, and asked for nothing in return. They resented that, deeply, and my younger sibling, a shadow. They followed whichever voice was loudest, whoever offered approval first. Their loyalty changed direction like wind in a storm. They were never cruel, not intentionally, but they never stood between me and cruelty either. In that household, silence wasn't absence, it was strategy. Everyone played their part. My mother pulled the strings. My father pretended not to see. My older sibling positioned themselves for every advantage. My younger sibling drifted to whichever side seemed safest. And then there was me, the quiet one, the dependable one, the one who filled every gap so no one had to face the truth, that our family was held together not by love, but by fear of what would happen if the truth ever surfaced. I didn't understand that role at first. I only knew that when something broke, I fixed it. When someone failed, I stepped in. When chaos erupted, I absorbed it. And each time I did, their dependence on me grew, while their respect for me shrank. Our financial situation looked stable from the outside, but behind the walls were debts no one mentioned, arguments about money that ended abruptly whenever I entered the room, and decisions made without me but paid for by my labor. I was part of the family, yes, but only as long as I remained useful. It would take years before I understood the cruel truth. I wasn't being raised. I was being conditioned. Conditioned to serve. Conditioned to stay silent. Conditioned to carry burdens that would eventually become weapons used against me. The house seemed calm to outsiders, but beneath the veneer was a tension thick enough to choke on. A mother desperate to control her narrative. A father drifting through guilt. Siblings sharpening quiet resentments like knives waiting for their moment. And me, standing in the center of it all, unaware that every favor, every sacrifice, every late-night responsibility was pushing me closer to a betrayal so calculated it would tear the family's illusions apart forever. This was my normal. The normal they eventually twisted into a reason to cast me out. The betrayal didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in silently, like mold spreading behind a wall, unseen, ignored, but poisoning everything from within. It began with small changes in how they spoke to me, how they watched me, how they whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. A shift so subtle, I blamed myself for noticing it. The first clear sign came the day I found my mother sitting at the dining table with documents she hid the moment I entered the room. She smiled too quickly, asked too many questions about my work schedule, then dismissed me before I could answer. It was the kind of smile you give when you're afraid someone might discover the truth by accident. Weeks later, the atmosphere changed entirely. Conversation stopped when I stepped into the hallway. My older sibling avoided eye contact, but smirked behind my back, as if enjoying a private joke. My father's silence grew heavier, like he was carrying a secret too large to keep, but too dangerous to confess. And my younger sibling, once my shadow, began recording moments on their phone, slipping it into their pocket whenever tension rose, capturing only the parts that made me look angry, tired, unstable. I didn't understand why, until the morning I went to renew the documents for the small property my grandmother had left me. A home I cherished. Not for its value, but because it was the only thing in my life untouched by manipulation. When the clerk placed the file on the counter, I felt the world tilt. My name was gone. The property had been transferred months earlier. The signature authorizing the transfer was mine, except it wasn't. Every curve of the signature, every stroke of the pen, had been forged. My mother had stolen my inheritance, and she had done it with the help of my older sibling, who convinced her that I did not deserve it, that I was planning to leave the family, that I was ungrateful for everything they'd sacrificed. I confronted her that night. I was shaking, not from anger, but from the realization that the betrayal I feared was not imagined. It was real, calculated. She didn't deny it. She only stared at me with a blank expression and said, "You didn't need it. You would have wasted it." My father stood nearby, silent. He knew. He admitted it only with his eyes, eyes that begged me not to force the truth into the open. When I asked why no one had told me, my older sibling stepped forward, arms folded, confidence dripping from every word. "Because you don't deserve what you didn't earn." The room spun, my knees buckled. Not from financial loss, but from the knowledge that the people I sacrificed everything for had planned my erasure long before the papers were signed. But their betrayal didn't end there. They blamed me for the family's financial strain, even though I was the one paying the bills. They claimed I was irresponsible, accused me of hiding money, said I was creating tension in the house. Lies layered upon lies until they created a version of me that never existed. Then came the public humiliation. At a family gathering, surrounded by relatives, neighbors, friends, my mother told everyone I was unstable, difficult, untrustworthy. She said I had become a burden. She spoke about me as if I weren't standing right there. My father nodded silently. My older sibling added details that never happened. My younger sibling played the recordings they had collected, carefully edited moments that made it look as though I was the one causing chaos. I watched faces twist into judgment. People who once praised my reliability now looked at me with suspicion. I tried to speak, but my mother raised her voice over mine, drowning me out. And then it happened. The final blow. My older sibling stood up and declared, "We've made a decision. You're no longer part of this family." The words were delivered with a calmness that chilled me to my core. The room fell silent, everyone waiting to see what I would do. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply felt something inside me break. A fracture so deep that even the strongest apology could never repair it. They told me to leave the house that night. Not in private, not with dignity. They threw my belongings into the street while neighbors watched. They locked the door, turned off the lights, pretended they couldn't hear me calling out their names. And the most painful part? My father watched from the window. My mother closed the curtains. My older sibling laughed. My younger sibling filmed it. That was the night they erased me. The night they told the world I was worthless. The night I realized the people I loved most were capable of destroying me without hesitation. They thought it ended there. They had no idea that this was only the beginning, the moment that would set in motion a reckoning none of them were prepared to face. After the night they shut the door on me, my life didn't explode. It quietly unraveled. I moved between couches, spare rooms, and the back seat of my car, pretending each place was temporary, even though I had nowhere else to go. Job interviews that once felt hopeful turned into silent accusations. Employers smiled until they checked references. Then the tone changed. Rumors had already spread, edited clips, twisted stories, and carefully planted lies that painted me as unstable. My family had made sure the world believed I deserved what they did to me. The first months were survival. Small paychecks, cheap meals, long nights where panic sat in my chest like weight. Therapy became a necessity, not a luxury. A place where I learned that what I felt wasn't weakness, but the natural aftermath of being betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect me. Slowly, the fog lifted enough for me to see my past clearly. Childhood memories sharpened. The favoritism, the subtle corrections, the way love in our house felt conditional. I realized the betrayal didn't begin the night they disowned me. It had been building for years. The turning point came in a storage unit I'd been paying for in secret. A dusty box of papers revealed more truth than any conversation ever had. Mismatched payments, letters addressed to my grandmother contradicting the official family story, and a note from an attorney referencing meetings no one had told me about. The handwriting, the dates, the transfers. None of it matched the narrative I had been fed. These weren't accidents. They were calculations. Then, one night, a call from a distant aunt fractured everything wide open. She spoke quietly, almost guilty, as she described what she'd witnessed. Secret meetings between my mother and older sibling, discussions about securing assets, emails arranging how to spin the story if I ever fought back. She forwarded the messages. The evidence was undeniable. Forged signatures, redirected money, legal maneuvers planned months before they pushed me out. As I pieced the truth together, their campaign intensified. My sibling fed half-stories to friends. My mother froze accounts. A lawyer they hired filed motions to strip me of access to anything that could help me defend myself. They weren't just erasing me. They were building a case against my existence. But isolation has a way of forcing clarity. I rebuilt quietly. Night classes in bookkeeping and basic law, a string of small jobs, a mentor at a legal clinic who explained every document they used against me. Allies appeared in unexpected places: an old neighbor, a records clerk, a former business partner who had grown suspicious. Each provided a piece of the puzzle. And then I found the document that changed everything. Hidden behind an old photograph was a handwritten codicil to my grandmother's will, naming me as a beneficiary to property and savings I had never known existed. It had been removed before filing, concealed the moment it could have protected me. Beside it, records of debts my mother had hidden confirmed the truth. They needed someone to blame, someone to cut out, so the consequences of their decisions wouldn't come back to them. By the time I closed that shoebox, I understood the full scale of what they'd done. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had prepared for it, rehearsed it, and executed it like a strategy. And now, I finally had the evidence to expose them. The plan did not start with a single decision. It emerged quietly, like a tide rising while no one notices. By the time I realized I was building something, the foundation was already there. Skills honed by necessity, knowledge gathered in fragments, dates and names, arranged into a timeline that revealed the truth more clearly than any confession ever could. What they took from me had rewritten my life, but what I gained in the aftermath reshaped me even more. I was no longer the person who asked for permission to belong. I had learned the architecture of power and how to dismantle it without raising my voice. My transformation began with education, not vengeance. I attended free legal workshops at the community center, listened to attorneys explain wills, trusts, and property titles, took online classes in accounting, and studied family business structures. Each new detail revealed a crack in their story, another tool I could use. Allies appeared quietly. Ms. Reynolds, the lawyer from the clinic, became my anchor. She was precise and unflinching. When I showed her the forged ledger and my grandmother's letter, she said softly, "This is not just betrayal. This is fraud." She guided me in gathering everything legally and methodically. Mr. Collins, a former family friend, reached out after hearing whispers. He gave me old records that contradicted their claims and quietly proved they had siphoned funds before the betrayal. Business partners my sibling had alienated came forward too, offering emails, contracts, and recordings, evidence I could never have obtained alone. My therapist helped me refine my strategy and self-control. "This is not about hurting them," she said. "It's about restoring your truth." That became my mantra. With allies in place, I set the traps. The legal one involved a precise dossier, forged signatures, timestamps of withdrawals, saved emails, and witness statements. Quiet inquiries to banks, registries, and offices illuminated the truth. The social trap required no confrontation, only transparency. I shared documents with relatives, asked questions, and let silence expose the lies. Whispers of doubt shifted from me to the ones who had orchestrated my exile. The financial trap was subtle. Using savings and a small investment, I bought a minor share in a company my family relied on. A strategic move, not vindictive. The emotional trap was lighter still. I sent my mother a ledger page showing her forged signature, my father a private letter, and my sibling a property map. Small reminders that the past they buried was surfacing. They reacted as expected. My sibling grew restless. My mother tried gentle persuasion, and my father attempted peace, trembling. They knew something was coming. Foreshadowing sharpened the tension. I saw my sibling's car watching me. Drawers moved, messages arrived, subtle signals of fear. They circled, sensing danger but unsure where it came from. The stage for the final act was a corporate gathering, a meeting with executives and investors. Public enough for witnesses, formal enough for facts to speak without theatrics. I secured an invitation through the stake I had acquired. My dossier was ready. The moment I walked in, the final act would begin. The family that cast me out would stand on a cliff they built with their own hands, waiting for the first stone to fall. The day everything unraveled didn't start with fireworks. I walked into the gathering quietly, carrying only a briefcase and a calm I had spent years rebuilding. No dramatic entrance, no confrontation, just purpose. Inside that briefcase was the truth, months of compiled evidence. Signatures, transfers, emails, photos, witness statements. A map of every lie that had been used to push me out of my own family. I felt the tension before a single word was spoken. My older sibling kept glancing toward the door, pretending not to notice me. My mother smiled at guests, but her shoulders were tight with fear she couldn't hide. My father muttered to himself in the corner, panic slipping through every breath. And then, the first blow landed. The lawyer stepped forward, calm and precise. She displayed the forged signatures, lined them up with timestamps, highlighted contradictions, pulled up emails they thought were deleted, and exposed financial transfers that told the real story. The room went silent, not polite silence, heavy, suffocating silence. Then came the witnesses. Former associates stood and spoke plainly, recounting conversations and transactions that directly contradicted the family's public image. No exaggeration, just facts. Siphoned funds, manipulated deals. Lies repeated over and over until even they began to believe them. One by one, every thread they had woven began to break. Next was the will. The executor read it aloud in a room full of people who had been assured for years that I was nothing, that I didn't deserve anything, that I had been cut out. But the real document said otherwise. Properties, accounts, trusts, all originally meant for me, all intentionally hidden, all illegally transferred. My mother froze. My siblings stared at the floor. The truth wasn't a rumor anymore. It was official, legal, undeniable. Their schemes, every whisper, every plot, every lie about my instability, were laid out clearly for everyone to see. And with that, the power shifted. Not with shouting, not with revenge, just with truth. Everything they stole returned to me, legally and publicly. The companies, the accounts, the property, the inheritance. I didn't gloat. I didn't humiliate them. I simply stood there, steady, while they faced the consequences of the world they created. Their social standing collapsed fast. Partners backed away, friends whispered, people questioned who they really were after decades of pretending. And then, inevitably, they came to me. My mother, suddenly fragile, reaching out with a trembling voice. My father, facing legal issues he could no longer hide. My older sibling, unemployed and desperate. My younger sibling, quietly admitting they had chosen the wrong side. They wanted help, needed it. And this time, the terms were mine. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't petty. I offered support where it was deserved, but with boundaries that protected me in ways they never did. Justice didn't come through revenge. It came through restoration, through reclaiming what was mine and refusing to become the monster they had painted me as. Standing in that room, Surrounded by the wreckage of their lies, I realized something important. The betrayal had broken me once. The exile had nearly destroyed me. The manipulation had been relentless, but patience, strategy, and truth. Those were my weapons, and they were stronger than anything they used against me. They had lost control. I had reclaimed my life. And for the first time in years, the scales finally balanced. Just when I thought the storm had passed, just when the evidence had been laid bare and the family's lies fully exposed, a quiet unease began to settle in, a whisper in the back of my mind that something remained hidden. I had restored the inheritance, reclaimed the properties, and neutralized their manipulations. I had seen the collapse of the systems they had so meticulously controlled. Yet, in the shadow of that triumph, a single question haunted me. Had I uncovered the full truth, or merely the tip of a deeper iceberg? The answer arrived unexpectedly. It started with a letter, yellowed and folded with precision, tucked deep in the bottom drawer of my father's desk, a drawer I had never touched before. The handwriting was familiar, but the seal was old, worn, almost deliberately concealed. With trembling hands, I broke it open, thinking it might be some overlooked financial note or legal addendum. Instead, the words inside shattered everything I thought I knew. The letter revealed a secret partnership, one my mother had never acted on alone. Every decision, every manipulation, every strategic betrayal I had unraveled had been influenced, if not orchestrated, by someone else in the family. A figure I had trusted, a figure I had assumed was loyal to me, a figure whose intentions were cloaked behind a lifetime of silence. The implications were staggering. The carefully constructed plan to remove me from the family, the forged signatures, the hidden transfers, the isolation, they had been part of a much larger scheme than I could have imagined. But it didn't stop there. Buried in the margins of the letter, a reference to another document hinted at a secret that predated my own birth, something that could redefine the family hierarchy entirely. A hidden trust, a covert property, and a promise made decades ago. One that had the power to invalidate everything I had fought to reclaim. The words were brief, cryptic, but they carried weight heavy enough to make the room spin when I realized their potential. And then the phone rang. My younger sibling's voice, tremulous and almost pleading, broke the silence. They had stumbled upon a set of messages between my older sibling and an unknown accomplice, someone using code names, someone who had manipulated my mother behind the scenes, someone who had watched the entire game unfold like a puppet master. My sibling didn't know the full meaning yet, but the fear in their voice confirmed what I had begun to suspect. The betrayal wasn't finished. Before I could even process this, another discovery arrived, a DNA test. An anonymous lab report that had been mailed without a return address, with only my name scrawled across the envelope. At first, I thought it might be an error, or some bureaucratic mistake. But as I scanned the results, my stomach sank. The familial connections I had always assumed, the loyalty I had believed existed, were now cast into doubt. Someone I had thought a cousin, a sibling, a protector, might not be who I thought they were, or might have been working with others to shape events long before I even knew about the inheritance, the forgery, the lies. The implications were immediate and terrifying. This wasn't merely a battle of inheritance and manipulation anymore. It was a labyrinth of secrets, half-truths, and hidden alliances that spanned decades. Every step I had taken toward justice had revealed only part of the story. There were shadows still moving in the corners, eyes still watching, and motives I had not yet uncovered. And as I sat there, holding the letter and the test results, the realization hit me like ice water. The family I had thought I knew, the enemy I had already defeated, was only one part of a far larger design. Someone else had been orchestrating events from behind the scenes, someone who knew my moves, anticipated my strategy, and had been quietly shaping the narrative all along. My older sibling didn't accept losing. Not entirely. Their next moves would not simply be about recovering power. They would threaten my freedom, my control, everything I had painstakingly rebuilt. And I understood, with a clarity I had never known before, that the story was far from over. I closed the letter and stared at the room that had witnessed my victory. Triumph felt hollow, fragile, because now I knew that even after exposing lies, reclaiming property, and regaining authority, the real game had only just begun. And in the shadows, the true puppeteer was waiting, waiting for the moment to strike, waiting for me to make the next move. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I truly hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear from you. So drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you're listening from.